Previously on Break the Cycles. It's been almost 3 months since the beginning of the trip, and I finally crossed the southern border into Mexico. After visiting Tijuana and Ensenada, I joined three Colorado boys and we headed deep into Baja California. We left off last time in Coco's Corner at around midnight. We were laying there with our eyes wide open as we continued to hear the commotion of the two guys cussing in Spanish, the dog barking in our direction while we were sitting in our tent. But about an hour later, the lights finally turned off in the truck, and the dog finally stopped barking, and the talking stopped. We all eventually went back to sleep, but we kind of did so with like one eye open, like not really asleep. And the next morning, 6 a.m. rolled around, we woke up. We did not sleep well. No surprise. But the sun already came out from the east, and in the desert, like there's nothing blocking the sun. So as soon as the sun came out, it's like people shining all this flashlight like right in your face. Especially like inside the tent, the fabric kind of does some like softbox reflection, so like it really lights up. And the worst is like when the sun hits the tent, you're basically like you're in an oven, like cooking. So we had to get out. We did, and when we checked to make sure that everyone was still alive, no one went missing in the middle of the night. We checked to make sure that all the bikes are still there. And in daylight, we finally see the building better. And we see that there are some vehicles parked like next to the big building in the back. Well, in the front. We were in the back, but in the front. So we began to walk slowly and cautiously to the building. As we approach the building, we saw this guy standing there. He hears our footsteps and he turns around and sees us. And in perfect English, he was like, "Hey, you guys want some coffee?" Me and the guys, we just looked at each other and started to chuckle. Now, don't get me wrong, that this could have gone sideways very easily, but it looks like this time we lost sleep for nothing. After we had some breakfast with the host from Coco's Corner, he gave us some water and we went back to start packing. One of the guys had a flat tire, so we had to change that. That delayed us about half an hour before we can head out. After Coco's Corner, we went to look for some gas before stopping at Bahia de Los Angeles for lunch. Let me tell you, getting gas was a mission. The road was so bad as we headed towards a gas station that was supposedly the closest gas station to us. It was a ton of off road experience just to find gas. But eventually, we did arrive at Baja de Los Angeles and we had a great lunch by the water before heading west and then south. Soon after we went back to the main road, we hit our first military checkpoint. It's very interesting when you travel on motorbikes. A lot of the border and checkpoints, they just often just wave you bike. I mean, they'll be very diligent with the cars, especially the bigger the car. I mean, it makes sense because there's really nothing to where nowhere to hide on anything on the motorcycle. But it's also very easy, when you go across borders and then you're on a motorbike. We rode quite a bit of the highway since there's really is only one major road going south. However, when we started looking for places to stay or camp around 5 to 6 p.m., we really couldn't find anything nearby that was really nice, and we didn't want another Coco's Corner experience to test our luck. So at dinner, we pull into the town called Guerrero Negro, and we started looking for supper. After dinner, the sun had already set, and we still couldn't find anything on Overlander that was near, so we asked the restaurant owner if we can camp out in the back of the restaurant. So there's like this massive awning in the back of the restaurant that runs across the entire building. And the owner was super nice, and we literally just camped under the awning, away from the weather. It was great. The following day, we decided we needed some real adventure. Since we're riding down Baja, we can't keep riding down the highway. So we decided to hit the trail along the coast. And at first, this was okay. The road conditions was constantly changing, but it wasn't terrible. There were half-paved roads that had gravel on them, and we rode that for a little while. And then the roads were turned into gravels with a bunch of boulders and potholes everywhere. We rode that for a while. And then it got really swampy. We had some water crossing, which is very odd because it's like a desert-like environment, and then we have all this like swampy areas. But it wasn't that difficult. And then it went back to more gravel boulder rolls, and like it just switched back and forth. It was very interesting. At one point, one of the Ians hit a huge dust bowl. Like we're riding in the line, and he just hits this dust bowl, and it shot dust like everywhere. And because we're riding like kind of in a close formation, one of the boys that was right behind him got completely covered in the dust. Like completely went from like not seeing everything to completely blinded by the dust. And he was going straight, but then when he couldn't see, he got disoriented. When he came out, he was already on the ditch on the right side of the road, and he almost hit a tree. And this was us dragging him out, and it could have gone very bad. And we definitely should have taken that as a sign, but we're idiots, so we kept going. Next, we reached San Ignacio Lagoon, and there is a huge salt flake section. And this surreal crystallization on the salt and the colors, it was so beautiful. It was just out of this world. And this was like definitely one of the highlights of our, Baja ride, but we didn't stay there very long. As we venture further ahead towards the coast, we start seeing the road has become very sandy. It was a very thin layer of sand, but it was everywhere. So we discussed the potential of turning around and taking another route, but we all agreed that we were idiots, so we kept going. And as we were riding, the sand just got deeper. And at one point, one of the Ians went over the handlebar, riding in the sand, and it didn't look good, but he didn't really get injured. And we talked about it, but we decided to continue to keep going. And the sand just kept getting deeper and deeper as we kept going down this trail. Finally, we were riding in like a foot of sand, and we are inching along at 5 miles an hour with both of our feet out. I mean, if we were on bikes with no luggage, this might have been okay, but we all had at least like 40 pounds of luggage behind us or more. And the bike is just not, doesn't respond very well, and we don't have the proper tires for this. And we were just like, both of our feet are on the side, like inching along, and we finally called it. We were like, yo, like, we need to turn around. But we are really far in at this point. And obviously, when we're turning around, I dropped the bike at zero speed, which doesn't seem like a big deal. And I didn't think it was a big deal either. I mean, like, I just, the bike tipped over while it was like, making a slow turn. I just pick it up. No problem, right? Except when I went to pick up the bike, I couldn't get any traction. The sand was very deep and very loose, and I couldn't get any kind of footing to pick up the bike. There was no way to provide any leverage, and it was blistering hot. And as I push against the ground, I am sliding and sinking into the sand. I can't put any pressure on trying to like lift the bike up. So I stood there struggling and sliding. I tried to get on the back of the bike, try to yank it up by myself. I couldn't do it. I couldn't just like yank it up without like using anything, just upper body. And I completely exhausted myself for a good 3 minutes. And then finally, one of the guys walked back after parking their bike on a flat spot to help me lift the bike. We literally manhandled the bike, like just lifted it up with our like upper body, and then like wiggle my way onto the bike and then took off. Like we couldn't even put the kickstand down because it was a solid foot of sand. And this was my glamour shot after the bike got into a less sandy area where I can put the kickstand down. And this photo was actually used by Revzilla, featured on Revzilla for quite a few months, and we're advertising the gear I was using. Finally, after an unbelievable, exhausting ride, we made it to San Juanico. We didn't expect much for this small town, but when we pulled up, we were very pleasantly surprised. It was super nice, right on the beach side. There was places to eat, and there was a lot of people on the beach. They were swimming, and there was other cars, and there was quite a few different like places to stay, like hotels and stuff. So and we definitely earned our hotel stay that day. The following day, we took the freeway and headed south. I parted ways with the Colorado boys for the time being. I wanted to head to La Paz and find some locals, get a change of pace from the riding. The following day, I took Raquel to work on my bike and I headed to explore the northern beach. I also needed to do some homework on the ferry crossing to the mainland. The ferry port was also on the way to the beach, so naturally, this was a good choice. I never been much of a beach person. The beaches I have been to growing up, they're just kind of not that good. The visibility was bad, the waves are heavy, super crowded, the water is cold, trash everywhere. Why would I want to go to the beach? But this was different. This is the first beach I've been to. Warm water, crystal clear visibility. I had the whole place to myself. This was my introduction to the possibility what beaches can be in other parts of the world. And I couldn't believe it. If it was like this, I probably would go all the time. I stayed there until the sun started going down, and it was a mistake because the swarm of no-see-em was just out in full force. You can see them swarming, and I got out from the water, and then I literally ran to my bike, and I still got bitten like all over my shins, and they were so itchy. I also found out the ferry doesn't run regularly during this season. Contrary to the online literature, which says that the ferry runs every day, the ferry only runs every 4 to 5 days. And just so happens, I still have to wait 3 more days for the next ferry crossing. Next day, I hung out at Raquel's and heard from the Colorado guys. They are actually further south in a beach house of one of their parents' friends. They invited me to go down and hang out with them for a day before coming back to catch the ferry. And obviously that was the move, so the next day I took Raquel to work and I headed to Los Barilles to meet the boys. And man, this place did not disappoint. It was a massive vacation home right on the water with huge garage full of toys. We decided to take the ATV out and blast it down the coast and around town. I definitely prefer my motorcycle over the ATV, but it was nice just to sit in the back seat and just relax and able to like fully enjoy the view and the scenery. When we got to the end of the road path, there was this like really nice like open bar overlooking the ocean, and literally nobody was there. It was just us. And we went and got some drinks and then headed back to the house. The next day, we prepared to head to the ferry to cross over to the mainland. The guys headed straight to the ferry, but I went to visit Raquel one more time before leaving. Because of this detour, I ended up very tight on time. By the time I arrived at the port, it was already past the time I needed to be on the boat. The guys are texting me, telling me to hurry, and that I'm almost done boarding. The problem is, I get to this port, and if you've never been to a huge shipping port, it is massive. There are buildings, there are structures, there are boats, it's everywhere. It is very confusing, and you don't really know where you're going, and I couldn't have gotten in here prior just to look around. I could have only gotten in here because I was boarding and trying to go to the boat. So, first time in, super disoriented. Where do I get the ticket? I was like, really panicky because I was like, oh my god, I'm running out of time. So they pointed in a direction of one of the buildings and said over there, but I didn't really understand what they were saying. They were saying it in Spanish, so I rode in that direction.
You speak English? Where do I buy the tickets for the ferry? Right here? Where do I park? I just park right here? Okay.
The security guy understood English, and that helped a lot. I got inside the building and had to wait to buy my ticket. Meanwhile, the boat's departure time already passed. The guys are texting me, telling me, hey, you might need to take the ferry in the next few days. I really did not want to stay another 5 days. After what seemed like forever, since I was so crunch on time, I got my ticket and ran out and headed to the boat, hoping that it was still there.
Nope, sorry. lower? Oh, all the way in the front.
I finally made it onto the boat. I started laughing manically. That's how lucky I was. Next time, we talk about me getting out at Topolobampo in mainland Mexico and started heading south to a much more different Mexico.